found my wife's cheating house and realized our life was a lie.
The water was freezing. It dripped from the rusted U-bend of the sink with a rhythmic, mocking persistency, hitting my forehead just above the left eyebrow. One drop every 3 seconds. I had been counting them for the last 20 minutes while my knuckles scraped against the rotting wood of the vanity cabinet. I adjusted my grip on the pipe wrench, my muscles straining in the cramped darkness beneath the basin. The metal was slippery with grime and condensation. This house, our house, was built in the late 70s, and I was fairly certain the plumbing had not been touched since the Carter administration. A professional plumber would have charged $300 just to walk through the front door on a rainy Tuesday evening. $300 was 2 weeks of groceries. It was 1/10 of the new roof fund. It was a luxury we could not afford, or so I told myself as another drop of gray water splashed into my eye. I blinked it away, gritting my teeth. Focus, Robert. It is just a loose washer. It is just simple mechanics. Above me, the floorboards creaked. The sound was distinct, a sharp, high-pitched whine that meant someone had stepped on the loose board near the hallway entrance. Vanessa was home. I waited for the sound of her voice, perhaps a question about how the repair was going, or an offer to hand me a towel. Instead, I heard the distinct click of her heels on the laminate flooring, moving away from the kitchen, towards the bedroom. Fast. Purposeful. I tightened the nut one last quarter turn, feeling the metal bite into the thread. The dripping stopped. Silence returned to the space under the sink, heavy and smelling of mildew and old soap. I exhaled, a long, shaky breath that misted in the cold air of the cabinet. Crawling out was a dignified affair that involved shimmying backward on my stomach and trying not to hit my head on the cabinet doors. I stood up, my knees popping audibly. I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window, which had turned into a black mirror against the night outside. I looked older than 38. My face was smudged with grease, my shirt was soaked through the shoulders, and my glasses were crooked. I looked like a man who was holding on to his life with both hands, afraid that if he let go, the whole structure would collapse. "Hello, darling," I called out, wiping my hands on a rag that had once been a t-shirt. There was a pause before her voice floated back from the bedroom. It was muffled, as if she were speaking into a closet. "Hey, Rob. Didn't hear you. Is the sink fixed?" "It is," I said, walking toward the bedroom. "Saved us a call-out fee." I pushed the bedroom door open. Vanessa was standing by the dresser, her back to me. She jumped slightly, a subtle tossing of her shoulders, before turning around with a smile that looked painted on. She looked immaculate. That was the only word for it. Outside, the Seattle sky had been weeping rain for 6 days straight, turning the world into a gray sludge. But Vanessa looked like she had just stepped out of a sunlit garden. Her hair was perfectly waved, not a single strand out of place due to humidity. Her makeup was fresh, flawless, hiding any trace of a 10-hour workday. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and dark trousers that I knew cost more than my first car. She told me she bought them at an outlet store, a lucky find in a clearance bin. I wanted to believe her. I always wanted to believe her. "You are home late," I said, trying to keep my tone light. I was worried. "The roads are slick." She waved a hand dismissively, moving to unclip her earrings. Gold hoops that caught the dim light of the bedroom. "Oh, you know how it is. The market is crazy." I had to show that townhome in Bellevue 3 times. The clients were indecisive. Then traffic on the bridge was a nightmare. I walked closer to give her a kiss on the cheek, but she turned away slightly, pretending to search for something in her jewelry box. My lips grazed her hair instead. And that is when I smelled it. Usually, Vanessa smelled of the vanilla body wash we bought in bulk at Costco, or the faint, dusty scent of the old paperwork she handled. But tonight, she smelled of sandalwood and sea salt. It was a rich, complex fragrance, something thick and expensive. Beneath that, there was the oaky, tannic scent of red wine, a very good red wine. I pulled back, my mind automatically cataloging the sensory data. "Did you go out for drinks with the clients?" I asked. She froze for a fraction of a second. Just a glitch in the matrix. Then she laughed, a tinkling sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. "No, of course not." "Why?" "Oh, you must smell the office. Cheryl brought in some essential oil diffuser thing. It gave me a headache, honestly. I just want to shower and wash this day off." She breezed past me, grabbing her robe. I watched her go. The explanation was plausible. Cheryl, her broker, was into new age wellness trends. The scent could be from a diffuser. The wine smell? Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just the smell of the city rain on her coat. I went back to the kitchen to clean up my tools. My mind, trained by 15 years of auditing financial statements, hated ambiguity. It craved columns that balanced, numbers that summed up to zero. But marriage wasn't accounting. You couldn't audit a feeling. I tossed the wrench into the toolbox and saw the pile of mail on the counter. I had brought it in earlier but hadn't sorted it before the sink sprang its leak. Most of it was junk: flyers for gutter cleaning, coupons for pizza, pre-approved credit card offers for people with better credit scores than ours. I flipped through the envelopes with wet, greasy fingers. Electric bill. Water bill. A catalog for office supplies. Then I stopped. The envelope was thin and unassuming, standard white business size. But the return address in the upper left corner made my stomach tighten. King County Department of Assessments. A tax document. We paid our property taxes through the mortgage escrow account. We shouldn't be getting direct notices unless something was wrong. Unless we were being audited. Or unless I had missed a payment, which was impossible. I tracked every penny. I looked at the addressee window. VS Holdings LLC, care of Vanessa Sterling, 1402, Maple Drive. I stared at the name. VS Holdings LLC. My wife's name was there, clear as day. But the entity? We didn't have an LLC. Vanessa worked as an independent contractor for a real estate agency, but she filed under her own name. We filed joint taxes. I did the taxes myself every April. I knew every W-2 and 1099 form that came into this house. I verified the address. It was our address. But the recipient was a company I had never heard of. Robert? Vanessa called from the bathroom. The shower was running. Can you make me some tea? Chamomile? Sure, I said. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. I should have walked into the bathroom right then. I should have held the envelope up against the glass of the shower door and asked, "What is this?" But I didn't. That was the cowardice of love, I suppose. Or maybe it was the professional caution. In my line of work, you never accuse someone of embezzlement until you have the paper trail to prove it. Accusations give people time to hide evidence. Questions give them time to craft lies. I slipped the envelope under my shirt, against my skin. It felt cold and sharp. I made the tea. I waited. That night, Vanessa fell asleep quickly. She claimed she was exhausted. She lay on her side of the bed, breathing deeply, her face relaxed in the moonlight filtering through the blinds. She looked innocent. She looked like the woman I had met in college, the one who shared her umbrella with me during a storm and laughed when it turned inside out. I lay next to her for an hour, listening to the house settle. The drip in the sink was gone, but a new dripping had started in my mind. A steady, corrosive drip of doubt. At 1 a.m., I slid out of bed. I moved silently, a skill I had learned over years of waking up early to commute before the traffic hit. I took the envelope from my nightstand drawer and went downstairs to the small alcove we called a home office. I didn't turn on the overhead light. The glow of my laptop screen was enough. I opened the envelope. It was a notice of delinquency. Property taxes. But not for our house on Maple Drive. The property listed was 4450 Lakeview Ridge. I typed the address into the search bar. My fingers felt stiff. The map loaded, zooming in on a location about 40 miles east of the city. It was an area I knew by reputation only. The Highlands. Gated communities. Private roads. The kind of place where the driveways were heated and the mailboxes cost more than my car. I switched to the county property records database. It was public information, if you knew where to look. I did. Owner, VS Holdings LLC. Purchase date, 3 years ago. Purchase price, $1.2 million. I stared at the screen. The numbers didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. 1.2 million. We had a combined income of $110,000 a year. We had $40,000 in savings, which I guarded like a dragon guarding gold. We drove used cars. We clipped coupons. I fixed my own plumbing to save $300. Where did she get $1 million? I felt a wave of nausea, physical and violent. I had to put my head between my knees to keep from fainting. This was a mistake. It had to be identity theft. Someone had stolen Vanessa's information and used it to launder money or buy property. It was the only logical explanation. But then I remembered the signature on the bottom of the tax document. It was a copy of the original filing. The signature was looped, elegant, with a distinctive sharp cross on the T. It was Vanessa's signature. I had seen it on our marriage license. I had seen it on birthday cards. I opened a new tab and logged into our bank accounts. I had checked them 2 days ago. Everything was normal. But tonight, I wasn't looking for the balance. I was looking for the flow. I downloaded the statements for the last 5 years and exported them into a spreadsheet. I started running pivots. I filtered for cash withdrawals. I saw the pattern immediately. It was subtle, brilliant in its banality. Every week, there was a withdrawal for groceries. $400. $500. But we didn't eat like kings. We ate pasta, chicken, seasonal vegetables. I had always assumed inflation was just hitting us hard, or that Vanessa was buying household supplies, cleaning products, things that added up. Then there were the Target and Costco transactions. Hundreds of dollars. I clicked on the details of a transaction from last month. Costco. $450. 00, flat. Retail purchases are rarely flat numbers. Taxes make them uneven. $450. 00 meant a gift card purchase. Or cash back. I scrolled back. 3 years. 3 years of systematic siphoning. Small amounts. Just enough to fly under the radar of a trusting husband who was too tired to ask why the grocery bill was so high. But that only accounted for maybe $20,000 a year. That wasn't enough for $1 million house. I dug deeper. I looked at the transfers labeled Mom's Care. Vanessa's mother was in an assisted living facility. We sent $500 a month to help with her extras. Or so I thought. I traced the routing number of the recipient account. It wasn't the nursing home. It was a private account at a credit union in Bellevue. I sat back in my chair, the mesh digging into my spine. The silence of the house felt oppressive now. It wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, filled with the weight of invisible lies. My wife wasn't just spending money. She was building a war chest. But why? And how? Even with the skimming, the math didn't work for the house purchase. Unless there was income one didn't know about. Commissions she hadn't declared. Sales she had kept off the books. I looked at the clock. 3:42 a.m. I closed the laptop. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. If I woke her up and waved the tax bill in her face, she would have a story. She would say it was for a client. She would say she was a nominee holder. She would say it was an investment strategy she wanted to surprise me with. She was a salesperson. She sold dreams for a living. She could sell me a lie before I even had my coffee. I needed to see the asset. In auditing, documentation is good, but physical verification is absolute. I went back to bed. I lay next to the stranger who breathed with the rhythm of my wife. I looked at her sleeping face. She looked so peaceful. There was no guilt in her relaxation. And that terrified me more than the money. To sleep that soundly, you have to believe your own lies. You have to believe you are entitled to them. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the world scrubbed and raw. "You look terrible, Rob," Vanessa said over coffee. She was dressed in a sharp navy blazer and jeans. Professional yet casual. Migraine, elite. I rubbed my temple. I think the fumes from the sealant last night got to me. I might call in sick. She frowned, a performance of concern. "Oh, poor thing. You should rest. Close the blinds. I have a long day. Probably won't be back until 8. Where are you going today?" I asked, staring into my black coffee. "Northgate," she said without hesitation. "Open house on a condo. Then paperwork at the office." Northgate was north. The house on the tax bill was east. "Drive safe," I said. I waited 10 minutes after she left. Then I walked out to the driveway. I didn't take my car. My sedan was recognizable, loud, and had a distinct rattle in the muffler. I took the old pickup truck we kept for hauling yard waste. It was battered, rusted, and invisible in a blue-collar town. I drove east. The transition was gradual. The strip malls and gas stations of our neighborhood gave way to wider roads, greener trees, and higher fences. The air seemed to get cleaner, crisp with the scent of pine and money. I reached the coordinates of 4,450 Lakeview Ridge. It was a gated community, as I suspected. The sanctuary. The iron gates were 12 feet high. There was a guard booth. I couldn't drive in. But I knew the terrain. I checked the GPS on my phone. There was a service road for utility trucks that ran along the back perimeter of the estate. I parked the truck a mile away, hidden behind a cluster of fir trees. I grabbed my binoculars. I am a birdwatcher. It is a quiet, boring hobby that Vanessa always teased me about. "You and your birds," she would say. So tedious. Today, the tedious hobby was my weapon. I hiked through the wet undergrowth. Mud sucked at my boots. Branches slapped my face. I didn't care. I felt a strange, cold energy coursing through me. It was the adrenaline of the hunt. I reached the ridge overlooking the development. I scanned the house numbers. 4,440. 4,446. There it was. 4450, I raised the binoculars. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a house. It was a statement. It was modern, all sharp angles, glass, and dark wood. It cantilevered over a small ravine, commanding a view of the valley. It looked like something out of an architectural digest. It was beautiful. And it was hostile. It looked nothing like the cozy, cluttered cottage we had shared for 10 years. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the interior. White sofas. Abstract art. A kitchen island the size of a landing strip. And there was Vanessa. She wasn't showing the house. She wasn't wearing her blazer. She was wearing a silk robe, crimson, flowing. She was walking through the living room with a glass of orange juice in her hand. She looked relaxed, regal. She looked like she belonged there. She put the glass down on a coffee table. Then she turned towards the hallway. A man walked into the frame. He was tall, fit, wearing gray sweatpants and a t-shirt. He looked to be in his late 20s. He had the kind of easy, athletic grace that comes from never having to fix a sink in the middle of the night. I watched, my hands shaking so hard the image in the binoculars vibrated. He walked up to Vanessa. He didn't shake her hand. He didn't ask about the market. He wrapped his arms around her waist and buried his face in her neck. She leaned back into him, her eyes closing. It was a gesture of total familiarity. This wasn't a new fling. This was a routine. This was a morning ritual. Then she pulled away, smiling, and reached for something on the table. A small, black velvet box. She handed it to him. He opened it. I adjusted the focus dial, zooming in as much as the lens would allow. He pulled out a watch. The sun broke through the clouds for a moment, and the light caught the bezel. It was silver, with a distinct blue face. I stopped breathing. I knew that watch. It was an Omega Seamaster. 3 years ago, for our 10th anniversary, I had wanted that watch. I had talked about it. I had saved for it, putting away $50 here, $20 there. I had shown Vanessa the picture in the magazine. When the anniversary came, Vanessa had given me a sweater. She told me, with tears in her eyes, that the post office had lost the package with my big gift and the insurance claim was denied. I had comforted her. I told her it didn't matter, that it was just a material thing. I told her I loved the sweater. I watched the man put the watch on his wrist. He admired it, turning his arm to catch the light. He kissed Vanessa, a long, lingering kiss of gratitude. She hadn't lost it. She hadn't even bought it for me. She had bought it with my money, the money I worked overtime for, and she had saved it. But not for me. She had saved it for the life she actually wanted. For the man who fit into this glass house. I lowered the binoculars. The world blurred, not from the rain, but from a sudden, sharp realization that shattered my reality. I wasn't her partner. I wasn't her husband. I was her staff. I was the financing department. I was the maintenance crew. I was the necessary inconvenience that funded her fantasy. I looked at the muddy ground beneath my boots. I thought about the leak under the sink. I thought about the cold water dripping on my forehead. I didn't feel sad anymore. Sadness is for loss. You grieve when you lose something real. This wasn't real. My marriage was a line item that had been falsified. I stood up, brushing the pine needles from my jacket. I took one last look at the glass house, at the woman in the crimson robe, and the man wearing my time on his wrist. I turned around and began the long walk back to the truck. The audit was over. The liquidation was about to begin. Open house. The drive back from the Highlands was a blur of gray asphalt and windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the drizzle. I kept my hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, gripping the worn leather until my knuckles turned white, purely to stop them from shaking. My old truck rattled and coughed as I navigated the switchbacks down from the ridge, leaving the pristine, gated world of VS Holdings LLC behind and descending back into the reality of leaking pipes and budget deficits. I did not go straight home. I pulled into the parking lot of a generic big box store 3 miles from our house and turned off the engine. I sat there for 40 minutes, listening to the rain drum against the metal roof of the cab. I needed to calibrate. That is a term we use in auditing when the instruments are giving readings that do not make sense. You have to reset the baseline. You have to find zero again. My baseline for the last 10 years had been simple. I was Robert Sterling, the lucky husband of Vanessa, the man who worked hard to support our modest dreams, the partner in a life built on mutual sacrifice. That baseline was now gone. It had been erased by a glimpse of a silver watch and a crimson robe. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I expected to see a monster or a broken man, but I just looked like Rob. Tired, slightly disheveled, glasses fogging up. The deception was so immense it felt like it should have physically altered me, grown horns on my forehead or turned my skin green. But I looked the same. That was the terrifying part. If I looked the same, then Vanessa would look the same too. She would come home tonight, smile that perfect smile, and I would have to look at her and not scream. I had to become an actor. I had to become a better liar than she was, and she was a virtuoso. I started the truck. The engine whined in protest. I drove home. When I walked through the front door of our cottage on Maple Drive, the house smelled of bleach and stale air. It was the smell of frugality. We did not use scented candles because they were a waste of money. We did not have fresh flowers because they died too quickly. Vanessa was not home yet. That was a mercy. It gave me time to shower, to scrub the mud of the highlands off my boots, and to wash the cold sweat from my skin. I stood under the hot water for a long time, watching the steam rise. I thought about the shower in the glass house. I imagined it was a rainfall showerhead, chrome, massive, with water pressure that didn't fluctuate when the neighbors flushed their toilet. I imagined her standing there with him. Stop it, I told myself. Emotion is noise. Focus on the data. The data was this: my wife had embezzled roughly $500,000 of marital assets. She had purchased a property worth double that, likely using leverage I didn't know about or a private loan. She was living a double life. But why hadn't she left me? That was the variable I couldn't solve. If she had the house, the money, and the lover, why come back here? Why sleep in our lumpy bed? Why pretend to worry about the grocery bill? There was a missing piece of the equation. And as an auditor, I knew that the missing piece is usually the one that sends you to prison. Vanessa came home at 7. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, pretending to work on a spreadsheet. "Hey, stranger," she said, breezing in. She was wearing her professional mask, tired but upbeat. She carried a takeout bag from a Thai place. "I got us pad Thai. I figured you wouldn't want to cook if your head was hurting." I looked up. I forced the muscles of my face into a smile. It felt like stretching dried rubber. "Thanks, Ness. That is thoughtful." She leaned down to kiss me. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull away. I let her lips touch my cheek. It was the hardest physical act of my life. She smelled of rain and that expensive sandalwood perfume again, layered over the scent of spicy peanut sauce. "How was the open house?" I asked. "Oh, exhausting," she sighed, kicking off her heels. "The market is softening, Rob. People are looking, but nobody is buying. It is stressful. I might not make commission this month." I watched her face. She was good. Her eyes crinkled with just the right amount of worry. Her shoulders slumped. If I didn't know she had spent the morning drinking orange juice in a $1 million mansion, I would have offered to pick up an extra shift to cover the bills. "That is okay," I said, my voice steady. "We have the emergency fund. We will be fine." She smiled, a quick, tight expression. "You are always so responsible. What would I do without you?" The question hung in the air, heavy with irony. I knew exactly what she would do without me. She would move into the glass house full time. She would put the watch on the lover's wrist. She would drink wine that cost more than my weekly allowance. We ate dinner in front of the television. I moved the noodles around my plate, my stomach churning. I needed to get into that house. I needed to see the inside. Binoculars were not enough. I needed documents. I needed to know how deep the rot went. I knew her schedule. Or rather, I knew the schedule she told me. Tomorrow, she claimed to have a mandatory all-day training seminar in downtown Seattle for her license renewal. She said she would be gone from 8 to 5. But I also knew, from the brief glimpse of her phone notifications I had caught 2 days ago, that the seminar was actually a spa day with her friend Cheryl, followed by a consultation, which I now assumed was a liaison at the glass house. Wait. No. If she was with Cheryl, she wouldn't be at the house. Cheryl was a gossip, but she wasn't part of this. Vanessa kept her world separated. If she was actually at a spa, the glass house would be empty. It was a risk. A massive one. But I had to take it. The next morning, I kissed her goodbye with the same plastic smile. "Have a good seminar," I said. "Learn a lot." "I will," she promised. "Don't work too hard, Rob." I waited until her car turned the corner. Then I called my boss. I told him I had food poisoning. It was the first time in 5 years I had called in sick. He sounded concerned, told me to take 2 days if I needed them. I hung up. I was free. I didn't take the truck this time. It was too conspicuous for the neighborhood I was going to. I called a rideshare service and had them drop me off at a trailhead 2 miles from the gated community. I walked the rest of the way, wearing a black hoodie and carrying a backpack. I looked like a hiker, or a tech worker on a nature break. The code. I needed the code for the front door. I had watched her through the binoculars, but I hadn't seen the numbers she pressed. However, humans are creatures of habit. Especially Vanessa. She used the same PIN for her debit card, her phone, and the garage door of our old house. October 14th, October 14th, 2012. Our wedding date. It would be the height of cynicism, I thought, as I approached the sleek, modern door of 4450 Lakeview Ridge. To use the date of our union as the key to the place where she betrayed it. I stood on the porch. The house was silent. The towering fir trees blocked the wind, creating a vacuum of sound. I felt exposed, vulnerable. If the lover was inside, the man with the Omega watch, I would have to fight. I clutched the pepper spray I had bought at the gas station. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was all I had. I punched in the numbers. 1-0-1-4-1-2, the lock buzzed red. Access denied. I froze. Of course. She wouldn't use that date here. This place was the anti-Robert zone. I thought. What else? Her birthday? Too obvious. The lover's birthday? I didn't know it. Then I remembered something she had said years ago, when we were first dating. She had read a magazine article about passwords. You should always use something backwards, she had said. It confuses the hackers. I tried it. 2-1-4-1-0-1, the wedding date, reversed. A mirror image. A perversion of the original. I pressed the keys. My breath hitched. The light turned green. The deadbolt slid back with a heavy, expensive clunk. I pushed the door open and stepped into the cool air of the foyer. The silence inside was different from the silence outside. It was the silence of money. Thick, insulated, smelling of lemon polish and new carpet. I closed the door behind me and locked it. I was inside. For a moment, I just stood there, absorbing the sensory overload. The foyer alone was bigger than our living room. The floors were heated slate. The walls were adorned with abstract art, splashes of red and black that looked violent and chaotic. I walked into the main living area. The view hit me first. The wall of glass looked out over the valley, a panoramic sweep of gray-green mist and treetops. It was breathtaking. It was the kind of view that made you feel like a god looking down on the mortals. And I was one of the mortals. I walked through the room, touching things. I ran my hand along the back of a white leather sofa. It was Italian, soft as butter. I checked the tag. Roche Beaubois. $12,000. I remembered the fight we had had 3 years ago about a new sofa. Our old one was sagging, the springs digging into our backs. Vanessa had insisted we couldn't afford a new one. She had bought slipcovers instead. We have to prioritize the retirement fund, Rob, she had said. $12,000. I went to the kitchen. It was a chef's dream. Viking range. Sub-zero fridge. I opened the wine fridge built into the island. It was stocked with bottles of Cabernet and Pinot Noir. I pulled one out. Camus. $100 a bottle. I remembered the box wine we drank on Fridays. The one that tasted like vinegar and sadness. I wasn't angry. Anger is hot. This was cold. This was a freezing realization of how thorough the mockery was. Every time she had scolded me for buying a coffee, every time she had turned down the thermostat to save on heating, every time she had clipped a coupon, she was laughing. She was saving those pennies to buy this silence, this leather, this wine. I moved to the hallway. I was looking for the office, but I found the bedroom first. The bed was massive, a California king with a tufted velvet headboard. The sheets were rumpled. I stared at them, fighting the urge to vomit. This was the scene of the crime. Not the sex was irrelevant. The crime was the intimacy. The waking up together. The sharing of a life that excluded me. I walked into the walk-in closet. It was split down the middle. On the left, Vanessa's things. Designer dresses I had never seen. Shoes with red soles. Handbags that cost more than my kidney. On the right, a man's wardrobe. I touched the fabric of the suits. Silk, wool. High quality. There were rows of shirts, color-coded. Casual wear. Gym clothes. This wasn't a guest. This wasn't a weekend fling. This man lived here. He had a drawer for his socks. He had a designated spot for his cufflinks. Who was he? I checked the pockets of a blazer. Nothing. No wallet, no ID. Just a receipt from a dry cleaner in Bellevue, listed under the name Mr. Smith. A pseudonym? Or just a common name? It didn't matter. He was a symptom, not the disease. I left the bedroom. I needed information. I needed the brain of the operation. I found the office at the end of the hall. It was the only room that felt cold in a bad way. It was purely functional. A glass desk, an ergonomic chair, and a wall of filing cabinets. On the desk sat a laptop. A sleek, silver MacBook. I sat down in the chair. It adjusted perfectly to my weight. I opened the laptop. Password prompt. I tried the reversed wedding date. Incorrect. I tried her birthday backwards. Incorrect. I paused. I looked around the desk. There was a framed photo. It wasn't of me. It wasn't of the lover. It was a picture of Vanessa, standing alone on the bow of a sailboat, wind in her hair, looking triumphant. The name of the boat was visible in the background. The Lady V. I typed Lady V. Incorrect. I tried freedom. Incorrect. I closed my eyes. Think like an auditor. Think like Vanessa. What did she value most? What was her goal? She wanted this life. She wanted status. She wanted to be the queen of her own domain. I looked at the sticky note on the monitor. It had a list of phone numbers for contractors, landscaper, pool maintenance, housekeeper. At the bottom of the note, in tiny scribbles, was a sequence, 1M 2025. 1 million 2025? Was that a goal? A target net worth? I typed it in. 1M 2025, the screen unlocked. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I was in. I ignored the browser history. I didn't want to see the shopping sites or the travel bookings. I went straight to the file manager. The folder structure was meticulous. Vanessa was organized. That was one of the things I had admired about her. Properties. Taxes. Investments. And then, a folder named Exit Strategy. My heart hammered against my ribs. I double-clicked it. Inside were subfolders. Asset transfer. Legal drafts. Timeline. I opened Timeline first. It was a PDF document. A simple Gantt chart. Phase 1, Acquisition. Completed. Purchase of Lakeview property. Hiding of assets. Phase 2, Liquidity. In progress. Siphoning of remaining joint savings. Maximizing credit lines on the Maple Drive house. Phase 3, The Trigger. Scheduled, November 25th. November 25th. That was in 3 days. That was the day my annual performance bonus hit our joint account. It was expected to be around $40,000 this year. I read the notes under Phase 3. Deposit of bonus. Transfer of bonus to offshore holding. Initiate sequence. What sequence? I closed the timeline and opened Legal Drafts. There were several files. Divorce petition, draft. Restraining order, draft. Police statement, draft. I opened the police statement. The text swam before my eyes. On the night of November 25th, my husband, Robert Sterling, returned home in a state of agitation. He was verbally abusive regarding our finances. When I attempted to de-escalate, he became physical. He struck me on the left side of the face and pushed me into the wall. I stopped reading. The room spun. She hadn't just planned to leave me. She planned to destroy me. She was going to wait for the money to hit the account, steal it, and then provoke an argument. Or not even provoke one, just invent one. She would call the police. She would accuse me of domestic violence. In our state, a domestic violence charge, even a false one, would get me kicked out of the house immediately. It would freeze my assets. It would destroy my career. An auditor with a violent record? I would lose my license. I would lose my job. And while I was fighting for my freedom, she would be sitting in this glass fortress, playing the victim, spending my money with her lover. I opened the next file. Medical evidence. It was a folder of photos. Photos of Vanessa with bruises on her face. On her arms. I zoomed in. I knew these bruises. I had seen her practicing with makeup kits years ago for a Halloween costume. She was a wizard with contouring and shading. These were masterpieces of deception. She had already staged the evidence. She had dated the photos in the metadata to match future dates, or perhaps she planned to claim a history of abuse. I felt a coldness spread through my veins that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. I wasn't dealing with a cheating wife. I was dealing with a sociopath. A predator who had been feeding on me for a decade and was now preparing to slaughter the cattle. I checked the date on the drafts. Last modified 2 days ago. She was ready. The trap was set. The cage door was open, and I was walking right into it. I looked at the Asset Transfer folder. It detailed the offshore accounts where she was hiding the money. Cayman Islands. Shell companies nested within shell companies. I needed this. I needed all of it. I pulled a flash drive from my backpack. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. Fear had been replaced by a clarity so sharp it cut. I copied the Exit Strategy folder. I copied the financial records. I copied the captain's log, a spreadsheet I found where she tracked every gift she bought for the lover. His name was listed as Julian. Julian. So that was his name. Julian got a watch. Julian got a trip to Cabo. Julian got the best years of my wife's life. Rob got a restraining order and a prison cell. The progress bar on the screen crawled. 50%. 70%. I heard a sound. A car engine. Outside. I froze. The driveway was long, but the house was quiet. I heard the distinct purr of a high-performance engine. I minimized the windows. I ejected the flash drive. I ran to the living room window and peered through the blinds. It wasn't Vanessa's SUV. It was a Porsche. Black. Convertible. The lover. Julian. He was home early. I looked at the front door. I had locked it. He would use his key. I had maybe 30 seconds. I couldn't go out the front. The back? The house was built on a ridge. The back deck hung over a steep drop. There were stairs leading down to the garden, but he would see me through the glass walls if I ran across the deck. The garage. I ran to the door connecting the hallway to the garage. I opened it softly. The garage was immaculate, the floor painted with epoxy. There was one empty bay, Vanessa's spot. I slipped inside and closed the door just as I heard the front door beep and unlock. Ness? A male voice. Deep, confident. Babe, you here? Footsteps on the slate. Huh, he said. Alarm was off. I crouched behind a stack of storage bins labeled Xmas Decor, Gold Theme. Even her Christmas was segregated. Gold for the rich house, mismatched plastic ornaments for the poor house. I heard him walking around. Opening the fridge. The clink of a bottle. Alexa, play jazz. Music filled the house. I scanned the garage. There was a side door. It likely led to the side yard where the trash cans were kept. I crept towards it. Every step felt like walking on eggshells. I reached the handle. I turned it slowly. It clicked. I pushed. It opened. I slipped out into the gray afternoon light. I was in the side yard, hidden by a row of perfectly manicured hedges. I didn't run immediately. I waited to see if he had heard the door. Inside, the music continued. I heard the sound of the TV turning on. He was settling in. He was waiting for her. I moved. I kept low, hugging the tree line, retracing my path back to the service road. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. I had what I came for. The walk back to the pickup spot was a blur. My mind was racing, processing the new reality. 3 days. I had 3 days until November 25th. If I confronted her now, she would trigger the plan early. She would call the police tonight. She would say I found out and beat her. The bruises were already prepared. The script was written. I couldn't confront her. I couldn't sue for divorce yet. The legal system was too slow. By the time a judge looked at my evidence, she would have emptied the accounts and I would be in handcuffs. I needed a countermove. I needed to disable the trigger. I sat on a wet log near the trailhead, waiting for my ride. I pulled the hood over my head. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't a victim. I was an auditor. And I had just found a massive irregularity in the system. In the corporate world, when you find a fraud of this magnitude, you don't just report it. You freeze the assets. You lock the doors. You cut off the oxygen. Vanessa thought she was playing chess. She thought I was a pawn. But she forgot one thing. The pawn is the only piece that can turn into a queen if it reaches the other side of the board. And I had just crossed the board. I looked at the flash drive in my hand. It was small, silver, innocent. Phase 3, I whispered to the trees. Liquidation. I wasn't going to wait for her to liquidate me. I was going to liquidate her. The rideshare car pulled up. A Prius with a cracked bumper. Heading to Maple Drive? The driver asked. Yes, I said. But can we make a stop at a bank first? Sure. I climbed in. As we drove away, I didn't look at the photos of the bruises on my mental screen. I looked at the timeline. November 25th. I had 72 hours to rewrite the ending of her story. I took out my phone and opened the banking app. I didn't transfer money. That would alert her. Instead, I changed the alert settings. I turned off the notifications for high-value transactions sent to her email. I routed them to a burner email I had created 5 minutes ago. Step 1. Blind the enemy. Step 2 would be to empty the weapon she pointed at my head. I leaned back against the seat. The rain was still falling, but it didn't look like gloom anymore. It looked like cover. I closed my eyes and began to draft my own document in my head. It wasn't a victim statement. It was a declaration of war. But I wouldn't call it war. I would call it a correction. A necessary adjustment to the ledger. When I got home, I would cook dinner. I would ask about her seminar. I would massage her feet. I would be the perfect, loving, oblivious idiot she needed me to be. Because the only way to trap a predator is to act like prey until the very last second. I smiled. It was a cold, humorless smile that didn't reach my eyes. Turn up the radio, I told the driver. I love this song. It was a lie. I hated the song. But I was getting very good at lying. Asset liquidation. The human capacity for denial is a geological formation. It is built layer by sedimented layer over years, compressing the truth until it becomes hard, opaque rock. For the last 72 hours, I had been mining through that rock, not with a pickaxe, but with a teaspoon. I had to be gentle. I had to be quiet. If I struck too hard, the whole cavern would collapse on top of me before I could find the exit. 3 days. That was how long I had to live with a woman who had already drafted the police report for my arrest. The morning of November 23rd was a masterclass in surrealism. I woke up before the alarm, my heart rate already elevated to a sprint. Vanessa was asleep beside me, her arm thrown carelessly over the duvet. She looked like a child. It was terrifying how innocent evil could look when its muscles were relaxed. I lay there for an hour, listening to her breathe, thinking about the file on her laptop named Medical Evidence. I thought about the makeup kit hidden in the back of her bathroom drawer, the one with the palette of purples and greens she used to paint bruises on her skin. She was an artist of victimization. I got up and made coffee. I made her toast, just the way she liked it, slightly burnt on the edges. When she walked into the kitchen, wrapping her silk robe around herself, I kissed her forehead. "Good morning," I said. "You slept well." "Like a log," she smiled. "I feel good today, Rob. Really good. I feel like things are going to turn around for us soon." She was talking about the coup de grace. She was talking about the moment she would send me to jail and move Julian into the glass house. "I feel it too," I said, pouring her coffee. "I have a good feeling about the bonus this year." Her eyes lit up. It was a micro-expression, gone in a blink, but I saw it. The predatory flash of a shark sensing blood in the water. "Oh? Have you heard something?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Just rumors," I said. "But the company had a record quarter. It might be bigger than we thought." I was feeding the beast. I needed her greedy. I needed her so focused on the money that she wouldn't notice the cage closing around her. I went to work. I didn't actually work, of course. I sat in my cubicle and orchestrated the demolition of my own life. I called the forensic accountant I had hired, a man named Miller who had the personality of a concrete block and the efficiency of a scalpel. "Is it done?" I asked him. "The trace is complete," Miller's voice rasped over the phone. "We have the flow of funds. We have the IP addresses for the transfers. We have the link between VS Holdings and the shell company in the Caymans. And Robert? You were right about the loans." I closed my eyes. She forged my signature. "On 3 separate applications," Miller confirmed. "She used your credentials as a certified auditor to bypass the credit checks. She listed you as the guarantor for the mortgage on the Lakeview property without your consent. That elevates this from a marital dispute to federal bank fraud and identity theft. The Bureau is interested." "Not yet," I said. "Hold the Bureau. I need 24 hours. "Risky," Miller said. "If she moves the funds." "She won't," I said. "She is waiting for the big payout. She is waiting for the bonus." I hung up. The validation didn't make me feel better. It made me feel cold. My wife hadn't just cheated on me. She had commodified my identity. She had worn my name like a costume to rob the bank. November 24th was the day of the masquerade. We hosted a dinner for her parents. It was unavoidable, it had been on the calendar for weeks. I sat at the head of the table, carving the roast chicken, listening to her mother talk about the price of hydrangeas. Vanessa held my hand on the table. She squeezed it affectionately when she told her father how hard I was working. "Rob is our rock," she said, beaming. "He is so steady." I looked at her father. He was a good man, a retired mechanic who had always treated me with respect. He had no idea his daughter was a criminal. He had no idea that in 48 hours, his heart would be broken. I felt a pang of guilt for him, but I swallowed it with the dry chicken. Collateral damage was inevitable in war, even the quiet kind. I watched Vanessa pour wine. She was drinking more than usual. Nerves? Or celebration? She kept checking her phone under the table. I knew she was texting Julian. I imagined the messages. "One more day. Be patient. The bore is almost history." I cleared the table. I washed the dishes. I played my part. I was the dull, reliable husband, the background noise in the symphony of her life. Then came the morning of November 25th. The day of the trigger. It was raining again, a heavy, relentless downpour that turned the sky the color of a bruised plum. I woke up and checked my phone. The notification was there. Deposit, $42,500. 00, employer bonus. The money was in the account. I heard the shower running. Vanessa was getting ready. She would check the account the moment she stepped out. She would see the money. Then she would initiate the transfer. Then, tonight, she would start the argument. She would scream, throw a vase, scratch her own face, and dial 911. I got out of bed. I walked to the laptop on the dresser. I logged into the bank. I didn't transfer the money to a secure account. That would trigger an alert she would see. Instead, I did something she wouldn't expect. I initiated a wire transfer for the full amount, plus the remaining balance of our savings, directly to the mortgage principal of the house on Maple Drive. It was irreversible. The money wasn't stolen. It was used to pay down a joint debt. It was legally unassailable. But it was liquid no more. It was concrete now. I deleted the transfer confirmation email. Then I waited. Vanessa came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, steam billowing around her. She went straight to her phone. I watched her face in the mirror. She tapped the screen. She frowned. She tapped again. Rob, she asked, her voice tight. Yeah? I was tying my tie, looking at my reflection. I looked calm. I looked like a man who had nothing to hide. The banking app is down. Is yours working? I checked my phone. Seems fine to me. Why? I wanted to check if the bonus hit. For the budget. Oh, I checked earlier, I said, turning to face her. It's there. But don't worry about it. I handled the allocation. She froze. You handled it? What do you mean? I put it towards the bills, I said vaguely. We can talk about it tonight. Actually, that is what I wanted to mention. Get dressed up tonight, Ness. I want to take you somewhere. Somewhere? She looked confused, her internal calculations jamming. Rob, I really just want to stay in tonight. I have a headache coming on. This was the script. She needed to be home to stage the fight. She needed the domestic setting for the police report. No, I said firmly. You have been working too hard. And I have a surprise. A big one. It is about our future. I saw the greed flicker again. Our future. She interpreted that as my surrender. She thought maybe I had bought her a car. Or maybe she thought I was going to suggest a vacation, something she could use to distract me while she figured out how to access the money. Okay, she said slowly. A surprise. Be ready at 7, I said. Wear that red dress. The one you wore to your cousin's wedding. You look powerful in it. I left for work. The day passed in a blur of final preparations. I met with the private investigator in a coffee shop. He handed me a thick manila envelope. We have the footage, he said. Entrance and exit logs from the gated community. Photos of the boyfriend, Julian Thorne. He is a personal trainer with a record for soliciting. And we have the statement from the notary she bribed to stamp the loan documents. Good, I said. The police are briefed, the PI said. Detective Miller, no relation to your accountant, is waiting for your call. They are treating it as a high-priority fraud case because of the sum involved and the identity theft. They were going to pick her up at the office, but I told them you had a plan. I do, I said. I want her to see what she bought. It is cold, Robert, the PI said, looking at me with a mixture of respect and unease. What you are doing. She planned to send me to prison with a false rape charge, I said quietly. Cold is a relative term. I drove home at 6:30. The rain had turned into a storm. The wind was lashing the trees, stripping the last of the autumn leaves. Vanessa was waiting. She wore the red dress. She looked stunning. She also looked anxious. Her phone was clutched in her hand like a lifeline. You look beautiful, I said. Where are we going? She asked, her voice sharp. I checked the accounts, Rob. The balance is 0. Where is the money? I told you, it is a surprise, I said, opening the passenger door for her. Trust me. She got in. She had no choice. If she refused, she lost control of the narrative. She had to play along until she could corner me. I drove. I didn't head toward the city center, where the restaurants were. I headed east. Toward the highway. Toward the highlands. For the first 20 minutes, she was silent. Then, as we passed the exit for Bellevue, she shifted in her seat. Rob, the restaurants are the other way. We aren't going to a restaurant, I said. I bought something, Vanessa. I wanted to show you. I know I have been cheap. I know I have been boring. I wanted to prove to you that I can be ambitious. She looked at me, her eyes wide. She was trying to read me, but my face was a mask of enthusiasm. She was thinking, did he buy a car? A boat? We merged onto the dark, winding roads that led up to the plateau. The trees closed in around us. Where are we? She asked. Her voice was higher now. I don't like this road, Rob. It's dark. Almost there, I said. We turned onto Lakeview Ridge. I felt her stiffen beside me. It was a physical reaction, a full-body jolt. She knew this road. She drove it every day. Rob, she whispered. Why are we here? I found this amazing property, I said, my voice cheerful. It was listed under a holding company, but I did some digging. It is a steal. Turn around, she said. Her voice was trembling. Turn the car around, Rob. I feel sick. We are just here, I said. I pulled up to the gate of the sanctuary. I rolled down the window. The guard, a man I didn't know, leaned out. Name? Robert Sterling, I said. I am here to visit 4450 Lakeview Ridge. Vanessa made a sound like a strangled cat. The guard checked his clipboard. He looked at me, then at Vanessa. He had a strange expression on his face. Go ahead, Mr. Sterling. The gate opened. I drove through. Vanessa was hyperventilating now. She grabbed my arm. Stop the car. You are scaring me. What is this? How do you know this place? I know everything, Ness, I said softly. I didn't yell. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on the road. I know about VS Holdings. I know about the tax bill. I know about Julian. I know about the watch. I know about the plan for tonight. I know about the fake bruises in the makeup kit. She went silent. It was the silence of a bomb that has landed but hasn't detonated yet. We rounded the final curve. The glass house came into view. But it wasn't the beacon of light I had seen 3 days ago. It was dark. The landscape lighting was off. The windows were black voids. And in the driveway, the blue and red lights of 2 police cruisers were rotating silently, cutting through the rain. "What did you do?" Vanessa whispered. It was a sound of pure horror. "Rob, what did you do?" I pulled the truck up next to the cruisers. I put it in park. I turned off the engine. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just corrected the paperwork." I got out of the car. Vanessa stayed inside, paralyzed. I walked around and opened her door. "Come on," I said. "It is your house. You should welcome the guests." She stepped out into the rain. Her red dress was instantly soaked. She looked small. She looked like a child caught stealing candy, only the candy was $1 million and the parent was the King County Sheriff's Department. A detective stepped forward. It was Miller. He wore a trench coat and looked tired. "Robert Sterling?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "And this is Vanessa Sterling?" "Yes." "Vanessa Sterling," the detective said, his voice flat and professional. "I am placing you under arrest for 3 counts of bank fraud, 1 count of aggravated identity theft, and embezzlement." "No," Vanessa screamed. The sound tore through the night. "No. He is lying. He is abusive. Look at him. He brought me here to kill me." She lunged at me, her nails aiming for my face. She was trying to create the evidence right there in front of them. It was desperate. It was pathetic. The detective caught her wrist before she could touch me. He spun her around. The click of handcuffs was sharp and final. "You have the right to remain silent," the detective recited. "Julian," she screamed. "Julian, help me." "Mr. Thorne is already in custody," the detective said calmly, tightening the cuffs. "He was apprehended trying to leave the premises with a bag full of jewelry and cash. He was very cooperative. He told us everything about the scheme. He claims he was a victim of your manipulation." I watched the light go out of her eyes. That was the real betrayal. Not the money. Not the arrest. But the fact that her toy, her prize, had sold her out to save his own skin. "Rob," she gasped, turning to me. The rain was plastering her hair to her face. The mascara was running, ruining the perfect face she had presented to the world. "Rob, please. Tell them. We can fix this. I did it for us. I wanted to surprise you." I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had shared a bed with for 10 years. I looked for anger, for hate, for love. I found nothing. Just a vast, empty fatigue. "You forged my signature, Vanessa," I said. "You used my name to steal. That isn't a surprise. That is a felony." "I am your wife," she wailed as they led her toward the cruiser. "No," I said. "You are a liability. And I have liquidated the asset." They put her in the back of the car. She pressed her face against the glass, mouthing words I couldn't hear. She looked like a ghost trapped in a bottle. The detective walked over to me. "We will need your statement at the station tomorrow, Mr. Sterling." "I will be there," I said. "We secured the property," he said. "Since your name was fraudulently used on the title, the bank will likely foreclose, but the equity, well, that is a mess for the lawyers." "But the assets inside? The furniture, the electronics, the clothes? We cataloged them as proceeds of crime." "Burn them," I said. "I don't care. Drive safe, Mr. Sterling." The cruisers pulled away, their lights painting the wet trees in chaotic flashes of color. Then they were gone. I was alone in the dark driveway of the house that was supposed to be my replacement. I looked at the structure. It was just wood and glass. It wasn't a monster. It was just a building. It held no power over me anymore. I got back into my truck. The seat was cold. I sat there for a moment, listening to the engine idle. I thought about going home. To the leaky sink. To the old sofa. To the silence. It would be lonely. It would be hard. The legal battle would be long. I would probably lose the old house too, consumed by the debts she had accrued. I would have to start over. Zero balance. But as I shifted the truck into gear and turned the headlights onto the long, dark road leading down the mountain, I realized something. I wasn't driving into the dark. I was driving out of it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the wedding ring. It was a simple gold band. I had worn it for a decade. It had left an indentation on my finger, a pale circle of skin that hadn't seen the sun. I rolled down the window. The wind howled. I tossed the ring into the ravine. I didn't hear it land. I put both hands on the wheel. The rain washed the windshield, stroke after stroke, clearing the view. Baseline reset, I whispered. I drove into the night, and for the first time in years, I was wide awake.